Hello, I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. And I want you to keep in mind our sponsor, the RSVP, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, which is part of Mature Services. Check them out. There might be some services there that you can use. But what we have today is one of our special guests, Mark Ludwig. He always comes with something interesting from the Medina Park District. Right after this message from RSVP, we're going to talk with Mark.
RSVP of Summit County has been making a difference in our community since 1972. RSVP volunteers are increasing the quality of life by participating in programs and organizations that provide important services to the community. RSVP matches personal interests and skills with opportunities to serve. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Welcome back. Our guest is Mark Ludwig. He's a naturalist with the Medina County Park District, and Mark always has interesting things to tell us about what's going on and what to look for at any time of year. And Mark, so glad to have you with us today.
Glad to be back. I always like to top myself on the program, the topics. And today is spiders. Yeah, we'll talk about spiders.
We're talking about those creepy crawlies. And we know that they're associated with Halloween, a symbol of Halloween. Yeah. But there's a good reason for that, isn't it? Fall is when we tend to see more spiders?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see spiders all year round, but in the fall, some of them are at the biggest, as far as like their adult stage. But all year round, you'll see them, different sizes and stuff. But yeah, they're fascinating creatures. Unfortunately, they get a bad rap. A lot of people do fear them. There's a natural fear of spiders out there, and it seems like even more so than snakes or other animals that that people fear. So,
well, maybe that's because spiders can invade our houses, whereas you rarely have a snake making its way into the house. But spiders, they seem to be everywhere, and this time of year, they especially do come into the houses.
Yep. Yeah, and worldwide there's about 40,000 different species of spiders. In Ohio, we have about 624 species they've counted. So quite a lot of spider species. A lot of them are all different sizes. A lot of them are tiny, so you don't even notice them. But we'll talk about in the next few minutes. We'll talk about some of the spiders that we have around this area. I brought a lot of pictures in to show everybody. But we'll start with, first of all, and I always want to, and I actually wrote this down to make sure that I said this, because this is very important. Spiders are very beneficial in nature because they do eat a lot of insects, a lot of pests, so they're very, very important to have, and very important for our environment. And the fear is that, obviously, people do fear spiders because they are venomous. And actually, all spiders possess venom, which is, people say, oh, well, some are venomous, some are not. Or usually what people say is poisonous, but venom is actually injected. Poison is, taken, through the mouth or whatever. So, but yeah, pretty much all the spiders have venom. There is one exception to the rule. But their venom is little effect on humans or pets.
Well, let me ask you a question here. Is that why if you do get a spider bite, it tends to, swell up and that?
Yep, and there's basically, I mean, the amount of venom in spider is, in the spider is very tiny, and their venom is really adapted for insects. So most people are not insects, so so we're not, so it doesn't really affect most people. And the saying also with, saying that, some people obviously can be allergic to spider bites, like, bee stings or, yellow jackets or whatever. So, people may be affected differently, but really, most spiders are not going to have an effect on us. Actually, if you can go back to the last slide, I'm sorry. Our large size basically is the reason that protects us, so in our physiology as well. And the other important thing to say is that spider bites are very rare. So it is very rare to get bit by a spider. A lot of times we think that we get bit by a spider, but it could be another insect. It could be, there's a lot of different bacterial infections. So there's a lot of misdiagnosed spider bites. What they say is if you see the spider, where you think you got bitten, it's obviously a spider bite. But a lot of times you don't find that. It could be something else. So that's very important to say that spider bites are very rare. So a lot of times we think, get bit by a spider, but it could be something else. We'll go to the next slide. So pretty much all spiders in Ohio are considered, harmless. There are two that are in the United States that are very uncommon in Ohio. One is the brown recluse. The other is the black widow. They're pretty much uncommon. Black widow is mostly southern Ohio. I mean, yes, occasionally you can find it northern Ohio, but very uncommon. We go to the next slide. The brown recluse is generally native to the south Midwest, the southern United States. Occasionally they do come into Ohio, usually on shipping crates, if somebody buys something from the south, travels up, so that's usually, how we see them in homes and places like that, warehouses.
Well, it looks huge there.
Yeah, but the next slide actually will show you the size. So they are a lot smaller than you think. They do have, it's kind of hard to see in the photo, but they do have a violin pattern on what they call the cephalothorax, which is the top part of the spider. So it's really rare actually to even get bitten by these where they are native, where you do find a lot. I mean, there's studies been done where in Kansas there was a household that collected spiders for over like 2 weeks, and they found like thousands of brown recluse spiders in their house. And over the 8 years that they lived there, including during the study, they never gotten bitten by these spiders. So
this one is the brown recluse?
Brown recluse, yeah. A lot of people get bitten by the spider because they crush it. So, and that's the spider's defense, is obviously to protect itself. So a lot of times it may be hiding in like a shoe or clothing that they put on, and they crush it against their skin, and then it bites. The thing with these spiders is that it produces a really bad wound that just seems to never heal. But most people recover from that. Very rare fatalities with brown recluse.
And you said there are very few.
Very few in Ohio. Yeah, I mean, just not. They're not native really to this area. They can't survive our winters. So usually when people see them, which is very rare, they travel up in furniture or something that you've bought from the south. So we'll go to our next slide. So these are still uncommon in Ohio, but occasionally you can see them. They are identified by the females have that red hourglass shape on the bottom of the abdomen. And once again, like the brown recluse, they are very non-aggressive. They're not, if you're close to one, it's not going to run after you and bite you. Once again, these, if they get crushed, that's their defense, they're going to bite. This affects more of the nervous system. But once again, most people recover from this.
Now, what about pets? If you have pets out in the yard?
Yep, the same thing with pets. I mean, it's not gonna, they're gonna leave you alone, unless it's crushed. That's the way they really defend themselves. So, and that's how people get bit.
Now, is this the underside?
Yeah, that's the underside of the abdomen, and this is just the female, and actually the female black widows are the only ones that bite. The males do not bite. The males are actually much smaller than this. I believe they're brown. I'm not even sure if they're black or not. But yeah, it's very rare to get bitten by these. So, and like I said, they're very uncommon, uncommon in Ohio, as well as the
Do we have
recluse.
any of the brown recluse or the black widow around the Cleveland, Medina,
so
Cuyahoga
the
County
black
area?
widow is going to be a little bit, more common, even though they're still uncommon. Like I said, mostly southern Ohio, you're going to find them. I think I did see one time in Geneva. It was on grapes, basically. The other thing too is when people buy grapes, like even at the grocery store, we've had occasions where they'll bring them in, the cluster of grapes or whatever, and then the black widow is on there. So unfortunately, some make it, into the produce. But yeah, they are considered uncommon in Ohio. So both brown recluse and the black widow. So So yeah, once we get past the fear of spiders, which you shouldn't fear spiders, we'll talk about some of the spiders that we do have in this area. But first of all, and I'll go over this really quickly, this is just talking about, what is a spider. Spiders have the 8 legs, of course, 2 body parts. They have venom, of course, we already talked about that. But they also, the other key thing about identifying spiders is they all produce silk, which is very important. And we'll talk about in the next slide more about the silk. So these are a close-up of the eyes. So spiders generally have 8 eyes. Some have 6.
With 8 eyes?
Yeah, most have 8 eyes in this area.
I knew the 8 legs,
yep.
But I never heard the 8 eyes.
Yep, they have 2 on kind of top of their head, 2, as you can see right in the front of the picture, and then really small, a set of 4. And I believe this is a wolf spider close-up.
It looks like something out of a science fiction movie.
Yep. Yeah, it's and I think a lot of science fiction movies are based on spiders and other creatures that we have. But yeah, some spiders have excellent vision, very good vision. Others do not. Some spiders don't even have any eyes, so it just depends. But most have 8 eyes in this area. If we go to the next slide. So the silk is very important, and there's not every spider makes a web to catch the prey. What they call the web is also called a snare. So this is a lot of times we think of a really beautiful circular web that some of the orb weavers they'll make, and this is the snare. This is how they catch the prey, so the insects don't see the web. Of course, they fly in and catch their prey. So as you can see in the next slide. Very pretty, the orb web. And so they'll catch the prey, or the web will catch the prey. They'll run after the prey and then bite the prey with the venom.
What are all the little, like, dots?
I think that is droplets, maybe dew, that are on there. So they can, especially mornings that we have a lot of dew around, absolutely beautiful. I mean, especially when the sun, shines. So it's a really pretty web design. We'll go to the next slide, and so they'll wrap up the prey in their silk, and so for storage, save basically it's kind of like saving our leftovers when you go out to eat somewhere or whatever.
Now, do they inject their venom into the?
Yep, they'll inject the venom into the prey to subdue the prey, and then kind of a strange way that they feed. They actually inject like stomach acids out of their mouth into the prey, and it kind of dissolves everything inside. It basically turns the exoskeleton is what you call the skeleton of an insect. So it kind of turns the insides to mush, or what we say like a exoskeleton milkshake. It's kind of very gross this morning to talk about. But then they kind of, the stomach is able to suck up the liquid from the insect. So everything is liquid that they ingest, which is kind of fascinating. So, but gross. All right, next slide. So spiders also use their silk to move around. Now, not every spider makes a web. So some of them will use it to wrap up the prey. Others, we'll talk about they'll hunt the prey. And not use a web to catch it. So, but a lot of spiders will move around by what is called ballooning, and what they do is they produce a strand of silk, and they kind of throw it into the air, and the slight breeze will actually carry the spider around. So it's kind of they keep on putting the silk in the air, and the breeze is like a hot air balloon. It'll carry the spider from one place to another, and that's how a lot of spiders travel, especially spiderlings. The young spiders will travel great distances. I mean, sometimes miles, and if it's a wind, breeze that carries them that far. But yeah, pretty amazing thing. The next thing is they'll wrap up their eggs in the spider silk. So this one's actually carrying it underneath them. The spiders will sometimes carry their eggs.
Is that like a sack of eggs under there? Yep,
it's a sack of eggs, yeah. And I'm not sure of exactly how many eggs are in there, but quite a lot.
Well, it looks like there must be hundreds or thousands in there. But I imagine they don't all survive.
And that's the thing. Yeah, they don't all survive. So they do produce a lot of eggs. And then our next slide is they'll also make, some will make retreats, places that they just kind of hide out. So not necessarily catching the insect in this web. It's just a place, you know, for the spider to hide. So
you can see that sometimes underneath your outdoor furniture.
Yep.
When you take it out in the spring or the summer, there'll be those little white sacks there.
Yep. And then the other thing is you know, they'll lay, like I said, the egg case, but then they'll also, like this, they'll make a little sack or a place for the eggs that they'll, you know, put the eggs in there, and a way to protect them. Next slide, we'll talk now about some of the spiders that we see around this area. So this is called our common house spider, or cobweb house spider they call it. So this is very, very common, and probably every house has this spider. And they just kind of hang out usually, you know, corners of the basement or even outside. Eat a lot of, you know, insects. Once again, very important. So
now, how big is this? Because from the slide it's kind of hard to tell.
Some of these are kind of hard to tell, but they're pretty tiny. I would say,
about,
you know,
an
no
inch?
bigger than a penny. You know, the size of a penny.
And that's including the legs?
Yes, yes. So they're pretty small. Next one, so this is our house, or what they call a barn funnel weaver. And if you see a web around your house that looks like a funnel-shaped web, they actually hide in the smaller parts of the funnel. And when the prey hits the web, the spider will run out and you know, try to bite it with their fangs and inject the venom. So, so their web is not sticky. We'll talk about some of the other webs are sticky, where the insects will stick to it, but this just depends on its speed. As soon as the insect hits the web, it runs out and tries to grab it. So, and these are maybe a little bit bigger than the cobweb spider. You know, maybe the size of a nickel or a quarter. You know, maybe at the biggest. So, we'll move on to the next slide. So another house spider that we see, the yellow sack spider. And this spider makes a little sack, or the little retreat that it hides out in. So
I think I've seen those in my house.
Yep, and they're common too. And if I'm correct too, if I remember reading, they're actually been introduced from Europe. So they travel probably on furniture or crates or something like that. Moving on to our next slide. The banded, another sack spider. This is kind of cool because they also call it an ant mimic, and they're actually about the size of a carpenter ant. And so they pretend to be an ant in the way that an ant moves, in the way that it waves its antenna. The spider actually uses the front legs and pretends that they're antenna and just kind of moves them around. So they're trying to pretend to be an ant. And why would they do that? Is because a lot of ants avoid getting eaten by predators because they taste bad. So that's the theory, anyways, of why they mimic an ant. Moving on to the next slide. So this is the black and yellow garden spider, which is very common around people's house. A very beautiful spider, and these can get quite large. I brought one in. So we'll go to our next slide, which is another garden spider. And then the next slide is of the one that I brought in. So this photo was taken just a few minutes ago, and I actually let it crawl on my arm. But absolutely beautiful spider, the coloration on it.
And not going to hurt you.
No, and they hang out on the web, and they basically just are waiting for an insect to land in the web. They cannot see very well, so they just really depend on the vibration of the insect hitting the web. And if we go back to the last slide, yep, the web is actually, they have a sticky part of the web and a non-sticky part of the web. So so basically, when they're walking around, they walk on the non-sticky part of the web. And the amazing thing about the silk is they can either decide to produce the sticky silk or the non-sticky silk. It's amazing. And a lot of the orb weavers will actually eat their web and recycle it. So they'll recycle the old web. So it's amazing. It's a amazing thing. So yeah, our next one, we'll get through some of these a little bit faster. Spine microthena. It has a really pretty spined abdomen. Helps it, birds will avoid eating it because of the spines on it. Our next one is another orb weaver. Has a very long jaw, so that's where it gets its name. Found near water a lot. They eat a tremendous amount of mosquitoes. Next slide. This picture didn't come out as well, but it makes a blanket or sheet, a web that it hangs out underneath when the insect hits it, the web, and kind of attacks it underneath. But it looks like a bowl on top of a doily, which one time people put bowls, on actual doilies on their tables. So our next slide is grass spiders and other funnel web weavers. So their web looks like a funnel. Next one, actually this is their retreat of the funnel. So this is where they hang out and wait for the insect to hit the spider web. And our next slide is our nursery web spiders. So these are a spider that makes a little nursery. They curl a leaf with the silk, and then they lay their eggs in the leaf, and they actually stand there and guard the eggs, which is kind of neat. I saw this this year at one of our parks. Moving on to our next slide. This is a fishing spider, which hangs out near the water. They can actually dive under the water and catch fish. They're not going to catch, a 6-pound bass or something like that, because they're only about the size maybe of a quarter, or a little bit bigger than that. But they'll catch smaller minnows, tadpoles. They can stay under the water apparently for like 30 minutes. But when they dive, they actually have an air bubble that surrounds them, so they can keep the oxygen going and be able to breathe underwater. So next slide. A wolf spider is, now these are some of the bigger spiders that we have around this area. Mm-hmm. The coolest thing is that they're young or actually carried on their back. And I only saw this one time. We had a program where, it was a young naturalist program where a child came up and brought, this spider, and we looked closely at it, and there was little baby spiders attached to the back. So they just kind of hang out right on the back of the mom until they get a little bit bigger, and then they disperse.
They must be fascinating to study.
It is. There's so many fascinating things about spiders. Our next slide is a close-up of the wolf spider, the eyes that you can see.
So now we're seeing all 8 eyes there.
Yep, and a lot of times when you're identifying spiders, you're looking at different parts of the spider, including the eyes. The wolf spiders have, you can see the bottom 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 eyes that are in the shape of kind of like a frown. That's a wolf spider. If they were in the shape of a smile, that would be generally a nursery web spider. But so yeah, sometimes it's tough to ID spiders, but you have to really look at eyes and different things like that. Our next spider is a crab spider, one of my favorites. They're a spider that can actually change color. Some of them, depending on the background that they're at. So they're like a chameleon. So if it's a yellow flower, they're going to change to a yellow color. If it's a white flower, they're going to be white. And they don't make a snare or web to catch their prey. They just wait for, like in this case, a yellow jacket to come to the flower, and then they grab a hold of the insect and then inject it with the venom. So they're ambush predators, they call them. Next slide is, I brought one in, crab spider. So they're some of them are pretty tiny.
Oh, they would be almost impossible to see.
Yep. And they look like a crab, so that's where they get the name crab spider. Our next slide is of a jumping spider, probably one of my favorite spiders, because they're a spider that does not make a web to catch the prey. They run after it, and then they jump on top of the prey and inject it with the venom.
That one looks like a Halloween spider.
Yep, and they excellent eyesight, excellent or vision. Yeah, they can see very, very well, and they, when they jump, it's pretty cool. They're a spider that is like highly caffeinated, so they very energetic. Moving on, yeah, this is a close-up of the bull jumping spider. Very pretty green, what they call jaws on the spider. The fangs are underneath. Moving on to the next picture is a spitting spider, and this is a spider that actually spits a sticky like glue. And it actually glues the insect down to the substrate or whatever that it's on, and then they run up to it and inject it with the venom. So, and that next slide actually shows that. Yep, and a fly just kind of. So this is kind of like the spider.
So this gives you the proportion. Yep. Then it's really small compared with the size of a housefly.
Yep. So they're a little bit smaller spider. And then our next slide is of. And this is important to mention, is this a spider? What we call the daddy long legs or harvestman. This is technically related to spiders. It's an arachnid. However, it is not a true spider. And there's a myth going around, usually from the kids, that's saying that it's the most venomous spider. not a spider, and they actually don't have any venom. So, and that's our next slide. It talks about that. Okay.
Well, oh, Mark, this
I know
has
there's
been
so much.
fascinating.
I could talk all day.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I'm just mesmerized by those slides. And you actually have a booklet that's available at the Wolf
Creek Environmental Center right down the street in Sharon Center. And we have many of these books that are available. And it's actually through the Division of Wildlife, Ohio Division of Wildlife. They're wonderful pictures, wonderful information, so anybody can pick up one.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
No
I
problem.
hope you'll be our guest again very soon.
Yep.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We really enjoy having you as our audience. Please do come back, and in the meantime, please do check out our sponsor, Mature Services, and the RSVP program. Thank you so much for watching.
Since 1971, RSVP has been matching volunteers' talents to community needs. RSVP is affiliated with the Corporation for National and Community Service, a national organization that supports service and volunteering through grant-funded projects. Volunteers organize neighborhood watch programs, tutor children, renovate homes, plant community gardens, assist victims of natural disasters, and serve their communities in many other ways. RSVP offers maximum flexibility and choice to its volunteers as it matches the personal interests and skills of Americans 55 and older with opportunities to serve their communities. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.